Well, I wanted to make a video today about facing your fears, and look at this, how appropriate I have the Batman shirt on. And Batman actually was somebody who faced his fears head on. And I'm in another clip. I believe I hit on the fact that we want to face our inner demons. And when you face your fears, and a lot of self-help authors have talked about this and speakers, there are probably a ton of video clips on this on YouTube you could find even after watching this. What you find is a lot of people wonder, well, what do I do? What should I do? And in another one, I talked about soul contracts and I think it was almost like a year ago now. And I talked about a clip where I talked about finding your life purpose. And as if there's one way to find your life purpose and it's definitive and this is it. There isn't, it's open, you go with the flow. There are soul contracts you've made, there are things that pop up, there's the law of attraction, there's all these things. But what's interesting is when you face your fears, you dissipate the emotional energy. I just recorded a clip on this in terms of dropping issues that's entitled Dropping Issues. So just before this. And so what I wanted to say is when you face your fears, you get the energy moving in whatever it is you want to do. If any of you are students that are watching this, I don't know if you like statistics. I was frightened by statistics. So when I earned my sociology master's, I hired an amazing tutor. Cost me $750, I think, for that term. I forget. I think he charged me like 15 to 25 an hour. I don't remember what it was. But I did the work, but I had him walk me through it because it was an online class. And you know what walking through hell is like? That was how it was for statistics for me. Don't ask me why, but I had this fear. But by having a coach or somebody to face the fear with me, it made it easier. Um, you can decide for what issues that is. Now, it doesn't mean that if somebody wants to charge you $2,850, for example, for personal training for 1 year, like I have at Lifetime Fitness, there's a wonderful trainer that wants to charge me that much, something around that price range. Literally, that's a lot of money. That for me, I'm thinking, do I want to spend that money for personal training? And I don't think it's worth it. You know what I mean? It's like, is it worth it to you? Yes, you can maximize the results, but there are other ways that you can maximize the results. I mean, you might even, like, if you're trying to do something with weights, or you got to be careful because you do want to get the professional coach and you want to have that trainer, but you could also, I've known people who've read bodybuilding magazines. I know one person, he actually was at my gym, okay, and his fear was, he had all this weight. Now, this is how drastic his results were. In a year and a half, he went from being overweight and there was weight that he wanted to lose to modeling for a living. Can you believe it? He faced his fears around weight loss. And what he did, and you better believe I picked his brain. So what did you do? He said, well, I read Muscle Magazine and Men's Health, and he asked people for advice. But see, he didn't have a trainer over the year and a half, but he found the advice. Maybe the coaches, you could consider them coaches and trainers through the magazines. There are some cases, the thing that I've noticed is when you get a coach or a trainer and you're facing your fears, or a tutor, is that when you do that, when you go through with somebody else, then they're facing it with you and they can adapt to your style. Right now, I'm working on 5 courses for a university, okay? And this is a university where I have a lot of military students. And it's, they're small classes. So, for example, I might have one student in the class for 10 weeks. And so it's as needed. So, whenever sometimes the class isn't being taught. So it's not, full-time or part-time or anything like that. It's a contract type position. So what I'm doing is I'm working through their shells, and I needed somebody that and you want to talk about being afraid. I would overeat thinking about this, and finally, I turned to the university and I basically told him, I said, I'm going to hire somebody, and I mentioned that I'm just taking it upon myself to hire somebody who has strengths that maybe I don't have that'll help me with that. It's a lot of times when you are facing your fears, you almost don't want to admit a weakness. Have you ever thought about that? It's almost like you're afraid to say, well, I'm not good or skilled in that area. What we're really saying is, may not have a proven track record in a particular area because you haven't done enough of it. Okay? Or maybe you want to play up on the current strengths of where somebody already is in that area that maybe you need help with. See, that's a different way of processing it. So what you're saying is I need to benefit from that. So what I did is I put an ad on Craigslist, and I've actually had several people help me. Some people were not quite as skilled. More on the one guy was more skilled on the IT end. There was a gal before him. She was kind of good with the curriculum design element, but there was this third person who dropped out, and then a fourth person that so he didn't even, the third person just looked at it and ran away. So it was beyond what he felt he was able to do. And then he made up an excuse. I got it, no problem. Then the fourth one basically said, she said, yes, I'll do it. And we've been working together. We're going to probably work together for another month, okay? And I'm paying her, each time, and I'd committed to myself. It's like what John DeMartini says, right? That motivational speaker who I'd highly recommend. He says, basically, you got to constantly break through your barriers and be willing to pay whatever price. He says in a lot of his talks and on his CDs, and he has some great programs, he talks about be willing to pay whatever price. So I have this voice in my head, be willing to pay whatever price. I mean, financially or whatever. And so it's like you want to get done with things, but the fear, you see, when you face your fear, whatever your fear is, you got to stay with it. But you're going to become less afraid because you're facing your fears. It's not unlike if you were to take a public speaking class. So you might be afraid from day one, but then day two, day three, it gets a little easier, doesn't it? Because you're already doing it. So it's harder to be afraid when you're doing something. You can still be afraid, but you're doing it. You see what I mean? So in William James, and I teach this in the psychology seminars. He has a principle in 1896. He had a principle that he created called acting as if, where you go from behavior to feeling to thought. So by already going to the behavior, even they say if something is worth doing it poorly. You've heard a lot of people saying it. I think Brian Tracy hits on that. Um, the great motivational speaker. So if any of you have those types of things where there's something that you're doing, you're not hurting anybody, you're just working on it, you're moving ahead, and you're basically plowing ahead, plowing forward, then what helps with that is this idea of, okay, I'm afraid to do something, and you can change your self-talk because then you can look at a new record of achievement, that you are doing something. It becomes a lot harder to keep the old story, doesn't it? Because your new script is already saying, well, I am doing it. So with public speaking, whatever you're afraid of, you can actually do this. So with me, my fear was with curriculum design. I mean, if you see some of this work that I'm doing, oh my goodness. This is at a whole other level that I haven't gone to yet. But I said, you know what? I'm willing to learn. And so the person that I have hired is a project manager at P&G. She was a former project manager at P&G. So she loves this type of stuff. So what you want to do when you're facing your fear is get somebody that loves the fear you're trying to face. As we talked about earlier, right? We talked about the trainer. The guy that trained me, they gave me a free session when I signed up at the gym. He used to play for the Colts. Do you think he likes training? You better believe it. You see what I'm saying? So if you get an expert in the area that you're afraid of, it makes it easier because they make it look easy. So whatever it is, find the best people, and or whoever you can afford, or find people on YouTube that are doing something that you want to do, and get better at it. So this is something you want to keep in mind. I talked about this also in another clip. Sometimes you might run into people that have done things that have ideas that are slightly different. Brian Tracy talks about being 10% different, when you market something. So if you actually do something just 10% differently, that could be enough to create a whole different effect. So I've given other examples elsewhere in other clips, but what's fascinating about this is as you're facing your fears, you're going to have a surge of energy because you know you can do it. You literally start developing a belief that you know you can do it. It's finding a way, being open to how, those things will come and be revealed. Jack Canfield talks a lot about it. It's interesting because Brian Tracy and Jack Canfield, I assisted 2 events. Well, Brian Tracy with 2 events, Jack Canfield with 1. And again, he's the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. through seminars on DVD, through the president by having me. He brought me as a volunteer. I helped with the usher and product sales, ushering and product sales. So basically, it was so fascinating to get to talk to them, and especially Jack Canfield, man, with some of his grounded advice. But what is amazing is that he faced his fears because he got rejected hundreds of times. I think he said, did he say 2,000 times or something like that? But a lot of people, or no, it's a couple of hundred times. But a lot of people didn't fly with this idea for Chicken Soup for the Soul, and Mark Victor Hansen, of course. But it's so amazing how he was able to cultivate this sense of I'm going to do it anyway. And I think what helps is if you face your fear and you minimize some risk. Yes, there can be some risk, and you want to take the calculated risk, and a lot of successful people take risks and they fail and they learn from them. Yet it helps when you have food on your table, you have a roof over your head, and you're willing to do it. I remember the great guitar player Stevie Ray Vaughan saying in an interview that, and you might know that he was a famous blues guitarist from Texas who tragically died in the early 90s. But I remember seeing the television report, but this guy faced his fears of playing guitar for many years and not having a place to sleep. He literally, there were stories of where he was in such bad shape that he would super glue his fingertips back onto his fingers, and he would keep playing. And he would spend the night in the back of the bars. He would make a deal where if you'd play, would you let me stay kind of situation. And so some people are willing to pay the price to that extreme, and maybe that's great. However, isn't it also nice to face the fears and put the fear in its proper perspective? So that the fear, if you're not economically drained or worried, then that doesn't, you have the financial resources so that anything you're pursuing and then you make mistakes, okay, then you kind of say, well, I can still get, I'm going to keep trying, keep learning, keep moving forward. Another thing that we're talking about when facing your fears is besides the coaches and the mentors and the trainers, I just happened to talk with my neighbor who's also, his wife is a business owner, very successful international business owner for a media company. And very interesting, one thing we were talking about, and he was talking about a success seminar that came to his place of work where the guy talked about how, and I've done these success seminars through a university, something similar, but this guy talked about how he literally had to have the belief by surrounding himself with other people that were positive yes people. I was also listening to Hay House Radio the other day, and I was on Terry Cole show. I gotta remember the author, but I'm sorry that the name is escaping me. She talked about the same idea that if you have a negative person around you, that even if you're fearful of something, you can use that person as a reminder that it is possible. So even if they're negative or they're saying something can be done, I've had people tell me when things can't be done and then I just do it anyway. You know what I mean? It's like they'll go ahead and tell you where they are, but it doesn't mean that if somebody says that you can't do something or you need to be afraid, that you can't go ahead and do it anyway. It doesn't mean, it just means, a lot of people that say you can't do something haven't done it. Because if they had done it, they wouldn't tell you that many times. Now, there are some people that will say something based on their own experience and then say, well, you can't or you shouldn't do this or that. I think a lot of people are well-meaning based on their experiences, but ultimately you have to decide, do you want to A, face your fear, B, what are you willing to do about it, C, are you willing to get, coaches, trainers, tutors. Like I've given you a couple of examples from my own life. There are things that make me afraid. I allow them to make me afraid, and I'm working on those things. And then I get the help that I need, and I'm willing to pay whatever price, do whatever it is, like DeMartini talks about, and you just keep plowing through. Because see, what happens is success breeds success. You've heard it said, right? So if you keep moving forward, you know that, okay, I'm taking action, I'm taking some sort of action. And then if you do like a project of like number 5, project management, if you kind of have something scheduled into a calendar, or I'm going to have it done by this date, and this is the result, and then reward yourself. Like, I'm going to go see a movie. This is what I'll do. If I reward like there's a project, boom, the next day I go see a movie, or that night. So it's so exciting when you do that. And another thing that I've seen people do, and this is one of the final points I want to talk about, is when you have a big dream. that has multiple level parts. So what do you do when you have a dream? Some people want to write a book. I've had friends that want to write books, or they want to do something artistic or business ventures. And we were just talking about this, and this is really number 6. Well, number 6 was project management, I believe. Number 7 is this final point, this idea of persistence. And I've talked about this with a lot of people, that being able to see something through to completion is huge. Now, the definition of motivation, as I hit on in another clip, is with Davis and Palladino. They talk about arousal, direction, and persistence. Okay, so what you want to keep in mind is that this idea of being interested, having a direction, and like Jack Canfield says, knowing like 200 yards out, 200 feet out, what you're going to do, and then also persistence. The persistence is very, very, very important. If you know you're not going to quit, then even if you're afraid of something, you'll still go. Like, one of the few things that causes me to be scared, it scares the bejesus out of me, is it's exciting, but now I'm becoming less afraid of it, is recording my music. And I actually have a couple demo clips. I did quick demo clips. I put them on YouTube already. So it's kind of working as a way of facing my fears and kind of recording and getting them out there. I'm going to put 91 songs over time on iTunes and TuneCore. There's a company called TuneCore. I got to finish registering my music, although I have that songbook registered in 2002. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of my music, the 91 songs, and then the goal is to eventually do 2 versions for each, and then collaborate with another, songwriter, and then put some more songs onto YouTube. And I want to share this with you. And I'll make another clip about this, but when you start facing your fears, magical things start to happen, and I'm going to talk about that in the next clip. Okay, hopefully this helped. But basically, again, when you have the multiple level parts, that last point there is you want to understand that the persistence for the long haul is important. All right, thanks.